Okay, it is the last week of May in Georgia, and we are already getting up to, let's just call it 96. So that's what we're showing on our outside thermostat today. And so it's already getting pretty brutal. All right, so it got really hot here in Georgia pretty quick. We went from spring right into summer at this mode. I mean, we may get some relief here as we kind of ease into the actual summer months, but we're only right here at the end of May, and the heat is already pretty brutal. We haven't quite gotten to the extraordinary humidity yet, which is really the killer for a lot of us here in the South. But the temperatures are definitely there at this point. So, just like I showed you, the thermostat out there on our porch was 96 today, and so I think probably the actual weatherman temperature will probably be a couple of degrees less than that, but at least that's what we're showing. So when it comes to that, the last two skid steers that I have had, I have made sure that they have air conditioning. And so I know a lot of people up north are kind of like, oh man, air conditioning, you kidding me? You don't need air conditioning. Well, let me tell you something. Here in the South, you do. We don't care if that thing has heat or if it operates or not, but in the middle of summer, at least me anyway, I want air conditioning. And so the last two skid steers that I've had air conditioning in both of them, and I'm glad that I did. So anyway, what's going on with this particular skid steer right here is the fact that it has a leak in its air conditioning system. It's not a big leak, and it's right there at the at one of the ports that comes out of the compressor, and it's the low pressure port that comes out, and it's a very slight leak. And what I have been able to do for the last couple of years is just put a small amount of Freon in it each season, and it seems to hold up. So I am not going to go in, especially where that compressor is located on this machine. I'm not going to go in and try to reroute lines or change out the compressor or seals or anything like that, because I have been able to get away with just being able to do a charge on it at the beginning of the season. It lasts all year long, and so that's what I'm going to do here right now. I've got some work that I want to do here at the end of spring and early summer with this, regards some brush cutter and just moving some dirt around and just finishing up some things that I was doing in the winter, and it's already starting to get pretty steamy in that cab. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to lift the cab, and I am going to service it with a little bit of Freon. And so what I want to point out here is that this is an S300. I know a lot of that is kind of scraped off here in the back, but this is a 2008 S300 series. And so you have to lift up the cab to get to the low and high pressure ports for the air conditioning system. Other models that are less than the S300, I'm not sure exactly where that breakover takes place, but I can tell you that on other models, for example, I have a friend of mine that has an S185, and his ports are back here in this area. So he can service his air conditioning system from inside the engine compartment area. I can't do that. I have to open up the compartment, or the cab rather, and do it from there. So anyway, that's what I'm getting ready to do, being that it's so damn hot here right now, and my air conditioning system is not working all that great. It's a little bit cool, but it's not going to be enough in these types of temperatures. So I'm going to open this cab up, and I'm going to service the AC on my 2008 S300 Bobcat skid steer. All right, so right down in this corner, I had already loosened them up. We're going to get these nuts off of here. Another one. I know you can't see that down there in that corner. All right, we get those off. Those are 3/4 of an inch nuts, and then that's going to allow me to lift the cab up. Okay, now I've got the cab raised, and that's going to give me access to the air conditioning components on this particular model of Bobcat. And so what I'm looking for here is, I gotta climb up in here a little bit. All right, so anyway, as far as the air conditioning system is concerned, this is my high pressure line, this is my low pressure line, this is my receiver dryer, and without necessarily pointing out all the air conditioning components, basically right up here above me, this whole compartment right here is where some of the other major air conditioning components of this particular model are located. And just as a point of interest at this point, this whole panel can be dropped down. You can cut some tie wraps right here on some of the air conditioning lines, the high pressure and low pressure lines. You can also loosen up some of them over here. And this whole panel can be dropped down and gives you access to all of the major components of the air conditioning systems on Bobcat skid steers. You know, I don't know about the most recent models and all of that, but I'm pretty sure that they're all pretty much manufactured the same. So when it comes, for example, you have a blower fan, which is located right back there, you need to drop this entire panel in order to access that. And then you can change out that fan. But anyway, what I'm looking for right here is this high pressure line, and I'm going to put my Freon on that, and I'm going to do a charge on it. Now what I do have to do at this point is I do need to crank the machine, and even though the cab is raised at this point, I can still crank it. There's not a dead man switch on this anywhere where if the cab is raised that you can't still crank it. So I will crank it in this position, which is what I need to do in order to put the Freon in. I need to put the air conditioning system, obviously I need to have the compressor on, and I need to have the fan on high, and then I can charge the system. So that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, as far as the refrigerant that I am going to use, just pick up at your local automotive store or Tractor Supply or whatever. 134A is what my system is. And I just use this simple system right here. Now I do have a gauge system where I can put high and low pressure gauges on there, and I can see exactly what's happening. But being that I have just a small leak in this, and I can charge it and it usually lasts me a season, then this is the way that I've been doing it. Every now and then I will put a leak seal system on there. So sometimes you can buy these, and they're not just a refrigerant, but they also have a leak seal in there, which is basically a lubricant. But for right now, I think that I'm just going to be able to get away with adding some refrigerant to it. So I buy this kind of very simple system, and so what happens here is that this is sealed on the top, And when I put this gun or this trigger on the top of it, it has a pin that when I screw it down, it will puncture that seal, will allow the refrigerant out into this hose. I will put this hose onto my low pressure side, and it can only go one way. The low pressure side adapter, which is right here, is a different size than the high pressure side adapter. So you can't put it on the wrong side. So this will go on the low pressure side, and then you just use your trigger right here to release the refrigerant. And so the deal here is that while you're releasing the refrigerant, you keep looking at this band, this indicator, and when it's in the green, it's basically telling you that you have enough refrigerant in it. And so what I have learned with my particular system is, don't wait for it to get up here into the high side of the green band. I usually do pretty well with just by getting it down there in the lower side of the green band. You don't need much. When you have an air conditioning system that just needs a little bit of refrigerant, the tendency is that people want to put way too much refrigerant in it, and that can actually end up causing you more problems. So my attitude on that is just get this into the green, stop right there, see how it performs. If you think you need a little bit more down the road, then you can always add some more, but don't necessarily think that you have to put the entire can in there. A lot of times you don't, depending on the system and what kind of leak you have. But so my experience with my system is that just put a little bit in there, and that seems to do the tricks. All right, so the cab is raised. Can you crank this thing when the cab is raised? And the answer to that is absolutely yes, you can. And so what you have to do is kind of crawl up in here and go in here. You got to kind of reach in here to get to it, but and I'm going to do a crank, and it is operating. My window just slid down. All right, so it is up and operating. There isn't anything on these things that prevents it from operating. And then I do have the air conditioning system on. And then now I'll add the refrigerant. Okay, so let's put the regulator onto the refrigerant. So all I'm going to do at this point is just screw it on. All right, so that pin broke the seal. So then I will just put this on to the low pressure side. I'll be able to activate the trigger, which will release the refrigerant into the system, and then I'll just watch the gauge. Okay, I just lowered the cab and I checked the temperature. I just kind of felt it with my hand to see how I'm doing there, and so Air conditioning systems 101 that I did not do just a second ago, and that is that the RPM needs to be increased. I guess what they recommend is operating RPM when you are putting the refrigerant in. And I didn't do that. I was doing it at idle. But I did not put all the refrigerant in. I only just shot it for just a couple of seconds. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the RPM. That's something that you have to do. It's just you know, automotive air conditioning systems 101, but it applies to these skid steers as well. I mean, it's basically an automotive air conditioning system. So anyway, let me increase the RPM. I'm going to put some more of this refrigerant in, and let's get it in there good, and let's see how we're doing here. Okay, now we're talking. I can feel some definite very, very cold air coming out of these vents now. Yeah, so that was just me forgetting the process here. So anyway, yes, much colder than what I had before. So the other thing is that you probably saw me tilting that can up and down. And so that's a process of, you want gas going into the system, not solids. And so an air conditioning system consists of converting from a gas to a solid during its process. And so when you charge a system, you want it to have gas that's going into it. But the deal is that any of these refrigerant cans that you get, they have a certain amount of lubricants that are in the can with it. So every now and then, while you're putting it in there, you want the can to be upright so that it's putting gas into the system. You don't want a can to be upside down when you're charging an air conditioning system, because that's putting solids into the system, a solid liquid, which can destroy the compressor. But what you do want to do is you want to shake the can up a little bit, and you're doing it very slightly. You're not sitting there and just shaking it. But what you want to do is you just want to get the lubricants, you want to get the solid and the gas in there kind of working together, so that you're getting all of it, all the refrigerant into your system that you can. So that's what I was doing there when I was just kind of, you know, rotating it a little bit. But you don't want to just sit there and hold the can upside down, because with a refrigerant, what's going to happen is you're going to get all of the solids into the system, and that's going to destroy a compressor eventually. You want the can to be upright, but you can, you know, just kind of move it a little bit to shake it up. But anyway, that along with the increased RPM has given me a yeah, you can definitely feel the difference. So okay, so anyway, I'm going to put the bolts, or I'm sorry, the nuts back in. That's going to hold the cab down, and we'll see how this works. With as hot as it is, I definitely need this AC working. All right.